Exposed, 10 spine-chilling true stories from the haunted tunnels of CDMX's sinister subway. The train rattled violently in the dim light, the metallic screeching mixing with the thumping of Mia's heart. She had heard the whispers, the legends of lost souls lurking beneath the city. Every child's bedtime story turned into a grown-up's nightmare. Nervous laughter instantly turned to ice in her veins as shadows began to flicker along the walls, twisting her reality into a waking nightmare. This was no longer just a late-night commute, it was as if the subway itself had come alive, breathing in hunger and despair. Just ahead, she spotted two men leaned in, loudly whispering malicious plans that pricked at her skin like needles. Words like vulnerable and easy targets slithered through the air, wrapping around Mia's throat like a noose. She wanted to scream. No. Not here. It felt like the walls themselves were reaching out for her, mocking her anxiety as every creak seemed to echo, "You are not safe." Sudden darkness enveloped her as if the tunnels had swallowed the light whole. The fluorescent bulbs flickered wildly before extinguishing, plunging them into abyss. The rattling abruptly stopped, leaving Mia with nothing but the sound of her ragged breath dancing between panic and despair. She clawed at the cold metal seat beside her, desperation rising. This was her moment to flee. Her mind screamed one thing: escape. With trembling legs, Mia assessed her surroundings. The tunnel swallowed her in its grip. Shadows became menacing figures that lurked in every corner. From her bag, she fumbled for her phone, the faint glow casting an eerie ambience over the utterly silent underground. No one else would come to her aid. The thought of her young son waiting at home clawed at her spirit, anchoring her to some semblance of reality. Suddenly, a flicker from her phone illuminated a figure ahead, a shadow moving stealthily among the debris. Her heart stopped. The familiar face of a community leader, someone she had always trusted, was lurking in the darkness, his face twisted as he stepped into the light. A chill cascaded down her spine. What was he doing here? In a moment of clarity, she recalled the tales of the city. Trusted faces sometimes hid treachery behind warm smiles. "Mia, I think we need to talk," he said, his voice dripping with an unsettling familiarity that felt like a viper's embrace. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something cold in his gaze rooted her in place. The darkness closed in, every fiber of her being radiating panic. In that moment, she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of a predator assessing its prey. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Her instincts ignited, and she took a step back, a surge of adrenaline propelling her. The sobering fear surged as she turned, the flickering lights casting sinister shadows on the walls and the vibrations of footsteps making her pulse race. What choice did she have? Trust the predator in front of her or plunge deeper into the tongue of the blackened tunnel? Each choice led her toward a different unknown. Just as she turned to flee, she felt a grasp at her wrist that made her blood run cold. "Mia," he hissed, his grip tightening like iron, "you don't want to go where you think you're headed." The darkness thickened as Mia struggled against him, her mind screaming that the true terror was yet to come. What waited down this cursed tunnel? Dread or escape? The air hummed with tension, and she knew one thing: she had to get away before it was too late. Mia's heart pounded like a war drum, drowning out the faint sounds of the subway. Panic gripped her as she fought against his unyielding hold. The darkness around them felt alive, pulsating, eager for mayhem. The flickering light from her phone cast eerie shapes all around, turning the forgotten debris of the tunnel into horrific specters waiting to leap from the shadows. "Let go of me," she hissed, pulling with all her strength. But his grip was merciless, his cold eyes glinting with a deceitful hunger. The warmth of the subway train's temporary safety faded, replaced by the shivering reality of her predicament. "Do you really think you can escape?" he taunted, a sinister smile cracking his face. Each word dripped like venom, her resolve faltering with every syllable. The monsters in the shadows seemed to whisper her name. She twisted her wrist, desperate for freedom, but he tugged her closer, his breath hot against her face. There are far worse things in these tunnels than me, Mia. You need to understand the truth. His voice lowered to a whisper, the truth about what lies beneath. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she wrenched her arm free, stumbling backward into the oppressive gloom. The shadows morphed and danced, a slithering ballet of darkness as Mia dashed past him into the unknown, her sanctuary reduced to a distant memory. Running through the hollow darkness, every echo felt like a footstep behind her. She had her phone but feared illuminating the path ahead, a beacon for whatever horrors lurked in these cursed tunnels. The oppressive weight of the underground was suffocating, yet she pressed on, heart racing as visions of her son filled her thoughts. A shrill noise pierced the silence, a high-pitched wail crawling through the walls, making her stomach turn. Terror mounted as she sprinted until she reached a fork in the tunnel. One side whispered of faint light, the other descended into unfathomable blackness. Choices drummed in her head: light or darkness, safety or terror. With shivering lungs, she reached for her phone again, glowing bright in the void. The light softly revealed a warning graffiti scrawled in hasty letters: "Beware the lost souls." The words twisted in her mind, entangling with whispered memories of the stories she dismissed. Before she could decide, the echoes rolled louder, vibrating through her bones. Something shifted, scuttling across the tunnel floor near her. It wasn't just rats, she could feel it in her gut. A grotesque realization clutched at her. Mia. The community leader's mocking voice came from the shadows. You think you can leave? You've already been marked. Her blood ran cold. She turned, almost instinctively heading toward the light, the only shred of hope amidst the terror. As she sprinted, the tunnel seemed to pulsate, breathless and hungry, striving to drag her down into the abyss. Emerging into the marginal light of the other tunnel, she barely registered a figure standing ahead, silhouetted against the faint glow, the predatory gazes turned toward her, eager for her despair. Mia faltered, standing at the precipice of uncertainty as shadows closed in on her. Panic cascaded as she realized the wretched souls weren't just urban myth. Every tale she'd scoffed at had spilled into her reality. Join us, they whispered, voices flitting through her mind like a dark seduction. It's too late. For the first time, she understood the legend. It wasn't just the stories that haunted the subway, it was the very souls who had been trapped within its dark embrace. As despair clawed at her chest, she steadied herself. She wouldn't go quietly. She had to fight. With a surge of resolve, she took a step forward, ready to confront not just them but whatever they wished to unleash. But in that moment of determination, a horrific scream resonated from the darkness behind her, a sound that sent a chill up her spine. What had she unleashed? As the decay of hope seeped into her bones, she felt the walls vibrating with malice, and the scream crescendoed until it morphed into something that sounded eerily like her own name. Mia, come to us. And that was when she realized the terror had only just begun. Mia stared into the depths of the shadows, the walls trembling with something she couldn't comprehend. The scream echoed in her mind, a twisted symphony that drowned out everything else. It wasn't just a warning, it felt like an invitation, a lure into the unknown. Mia, come to us. The voices swept around her, coiling tighter, their chilling persuasion wrapping around her like a noose. Heart racing, she backed away, eyes darting for an escape. The fleeting light of her phone illuminated a nameless fear crawling along the walls. Flickering shadows surged forward, taking on grotesque shapes, forming an ever-pressing mass of hungry souls. They wanted her. Every story she thought she'd dismissed now burned in her memory like a brand. What lay beneath was no myth. She stumbled and turned, the path of darkness behind her suffocating, almost as if it sought to engulf her entirely. Ahead, she glimpsed movement. Someone or something slithered just out of reach. Mia's breath hitched. Was it a trick of the light, or was something watching her? Mia. It echoed again, but deeper, distorted. You belong as one of us. She clutched her phone, the waning battery a reminder that time was not on her side. What if her only weapon was about to fade? The vengeful cries grew nearer, their desperation radiating off the tunnel walls. She surged forward, heart pounding, needing to escape the whispers that taunted, promising relief just beyond the suffering, yet in this madness, a flicker of resolve sparked within her. If she was marked, it wasn't over. She wasn't done fighting. She pivoted sharply, ignoring the pleading voices demanding she turn back. Instead, she pressed onward, heading straight into the light, the frayed edges of her sanity unraveling with each step. As Mia neared the end of the tunnel, she felt a sudden cold rush enveloping her. A figure emerged before her, its contours sharp, cloaked in shadows, the face obscured. The thing shifted, a ripple in the air, and the miasma of despair deepened. Enough games, Mia. The figure's voice was smooth, yet held the weight of 1,000 tormented souls. You've crossed into their realm. They are hungry for you. And you will feed them. Stunned, she took an instinctive step back. The walls shuddered with unholy energy, the ground beneath her quaked almost eagerly. Mia scanned her surroundings, cheeks flushed with dread. The light from her phone flickered violently, a frantic heartbeat in the engulfing darkness. What do you mean? I've done nothing to deserve this. She shouted, trying to banish the dread creeping through her veins. I just want to find my son. Your son? The figure's expression twisted, revealing a face she had once known. A face she had thought lost. He doesn't need to be found. He is home, Mia. Here Mia's mind shattered, the black void of dread blooming into terror. She stepped back, the truth crashing over her like a wave. Her son. Here. Among the twisted souls. Join us, Mia, they chanted in chorus, a haunting melody that wrapped around her thoughts. Accept your fate. Her reality spiraled, the light dimming. The figure swirled in the gloom, extending a skeletal hand. Mia's pulse thundered in her ears. No. What had she unleashed? Were the lost souls simply victims, or were they something darker, something waiting for her to take that final step into oblivion? As the voices crescendoed once more, a chilling promise of unspeakable horrors loomed before her. Time slipped away like sand through her fingers. She had to decide. In front of her, choices shrieked. Leave everything behind or plunge into a void that might consume her. In this nightmare, would she be strong enough to reclaim what she had lost, or was she destined to join the chorus of despair? And as the walls closed in, a chilling question hung in the air, was she too late to save them both? The ground trembled beneath her, as if it were a living thing, eager for her surrender. Mia swayed, a maelstrom of panic and despair fighting for dominance. Shadows danced wildly at the edges of her vision, whispering her name, pulling at her very essence. Join us, become one. The skeletal hand lingered in the murky light, taunting her with its slow, deliberate movements. Mia's mind raced, unearthing buried memories of shadows from childhood stories, tales her grandmother once told about the forgotten souls who wandered lost in the dark, waiting for someone to take their place. They were children too, just like her son. Was that really what they wanted? To drag her down into an eternity of despair? No. She screamed, feeling the vibrations of her voice ripple through the chamber. I won't give in. But the shadows lunged forward, a chaotic wave of darkness that engulfed her, pulling her closer to the figure. Mia's stomach turned, a bitter taste of dread flooding her mouth. She fought against the weight of the darkness, desperation clawing at her throat. Think. Her son needed her. She had to reach him, had to find him before it was too late. As her fear began to twist into fury, an image of her son popped into her mind, his laughter, the way he'd jump into her arms after a long day. That pure, innocent joy. The thought sparked something in her, igniting a fire she thought was long extinguished. The figure's indifference was maddening, a perverse kind of cruelty. You don't know my son. She spat. He's not yours. Do you think you can save him? The figure asked, eyes narrowing in shadows, mocking her. He is already ours, and soon, you will be too. Mia could feel the weight of the words, darkened breaths wrapping around her neck. Panic thrummed through her like a live wire. She reached for her phone, its screen flickering a last desperate light, illuminating the grotesque features of the souls who surged forward, their mouths twisted into silent screams. In that moment, Mia remembered the story's rituals, incantations that could wield power even in the face of ancient evils. She called upon every ounce of courage she possessed, each frantic heartbeat leading her to a memory of strength. "I refuse," she declared. "You will not have me." The shadows shrieked, a horrendous cacophony that pierced through the darkness, a sound that clawed its way into her consciousness. She raised the phone fiercely, illuminating the ground where the shadows writhed. In that sliver of light, they recoiled, writhing and hissing as if afraid of illumination. Maybe that was what they were, fears that thrived in the absence of hope. "Go back to the darkness," Mia yelled, fury replacing fear. "You don't own me." Suddenly, the air shimmered, a crack forming in the darkness where the shadows recoiled. In that moment, she saw a glimmer of silver, a door, half hidden, leading to something beyond. She dashed toward it, heart pounding, knowing she might never get another chance. "Stop her!" The figure hissed, and the voices shrieked in furious unison, clawing at the air, desperately trying to pull her back into their grasp. With a strength born from pure survival instinct, Mia lunged for the door. The shadows lashed out, grappling for her ankles, but she kicked and spun. The moment she crossed the threshold, a rush of cold air slammed against her as the darkness shrieked in outrage. The door slammed shut behind her, the echoes of anguish fading into nothingness. But the relief was fleeting. Ahead lay another nightmare, a labyrinth of corridors, lit by dim, flickering lights that barely pierced the thick silence surrounding her. Beneath it lay a palpable tension, as if something was waiting just beyond her sight. She took a trembling breath and stepped deeper into the unknown. Where am I now? Is this a trap or a way out? A creeping realization washed over her. Whatever she had entered, escaping the darkness did not mean she had escaped its reach. It could be worse. Much worse, and in every shadow, in every creak of the floor, she felt the promises of the lost waiting. Breathing heavily, she pressed on. Was her son truly out there, or was she deluding herself? Would she find him waiting on the other side too? As a chilling whisper flickered against her ear, the voice returned, hauntingly familiar. "You can't escape us, Mia. You belong to us now." The walls closed in around her, and dread squeezed her heart. She could almost feel their fingers, pulling her back. Each step forward felt more like a step deeper into despair. Was there truly a way out, or was she destined to wander forever, just another lost soul? The flickering lights cast long shadows that danced erratically on the walls. Mia pressed on, her breath quickening with each echoing step. The air swirled around her, thick and stale, pressing in as if the very walls were alive, watching, waiting. Suddenly, a door to her right stood ajar, a sliver of darkness peeking out. She hesitated. Inside, she could hear something soft, pitiful whimpers wrapped in the silence. It could be her son. The thought pulled at her heart like a magnet. She forced herself forward, stepping into the room. The space was small and suffocating, filled with cobwebs that glistened in the dim light. Broken furniture lay strewn about like forgotten relics, but it was the center of the room that froze the blood in her veins. There, hunched over, was a small boy. His hair hung in dirty strands over his face, but she recognized him instantly. "Josh!" she cried, her heart flipping. He looked up, his eyes wide and glossed over, lifeless, familiar yet alien. "Mom!" he rasped, the sound coming from a throat that had been too long deprived of use. He reached out, but something unnatural held him back, a shadow-like tendril coiling around his small frame. "No! No, no!" Mia rushed forward, but as she moved closer, the room shifted. The walls trembled and whispered, the shadows writhing, as if the very space was trying to swallow her whole. "Are you here to join us?" he said, his voice echoing with a hollow ring. "You can't save me." Panic surged anew. She forced her legs to move, struggling against the encroaching darkness. "No. I can save you." I'll get you out of here. The shadow tendrils tightened, and Josh's expression shifted from fear to something darker, something twisted with despair. Help me, Mom, he echoed, his voice morphing into a haunting chorus that sent shivers down her spine. In that chilling instant, reality splintered. Mia felt a sharp pull within her own mind, drawn toward the darkness that surrounded them. The shadows called to her, sweet and poisonous. They promised comfort, a place where pain faded into oblivion. Join us, Mia, it's safe here. No. You're lying. Mia snapped, the defiance surging in her chest. She turned back to her son, who was now shrouded in a veil of shadow, his tiny frame bending unnaturally. Fight it, Josh. Remember who you are. Mom, the remnants of his innocence flickered in his eyes for a brief moment, a spark of recognition. Mia reached out, desperately willing him to break free. You're stronger than this. We're going home together. Suddenly, the room creaked violently, the shadows swirled violently as if a storm had erupted. The ceiling began to buckle, plaster raining down like a shower of ash around her. Let him go. She screamed, the fury and fear intertwining. The shadows hissed in anger, pulling both of them toward the center of a vortex, where the darkness churned wildly. Just as the abyss threatened to swallow them whole, an intense flash lit the room, a beacon of blinding white light igniting the shadows. Mia's heart raced, it tore through the suffocating gloom like a lighthouse piercing a raging storm. Time slowed. She could see the tendrils quaking with displeasure, jarring off her son, releasing him. Mia! Josh cried, scrambling to break free. Hold on! She yelled, grasping for her child as they were torn apart by the force of the light. The shadows screeched, a dissonant wail leaving a chilling echo in the air, thrashing against the luminance. They were losing their grip. Mia stepped forward, ready to snatch her son from the brink. But just as she reached for him, the floor buckled beneath her. She fell into the darkness, a swirling void reaching up to consume her. The last thing she saw was Josh's terrified face, fading as the shadows enveloped him again. Mom! Terror clawed at her heart as she tumbled into the desperate unknown. In the silence that followed, the shadows whispered, "You thought you could save him? He is lost to us now." As the darkness thickened around her, a new voice emerged, cool and smooth, almost welcoming. "Welcome, Mia, dare you see what we hide?" The echo of that voice resonated through her bones. It felt impossible to breathe, panic surged again, pressing hard against her chest. But the choice lay before her: would she capture that flicker of light and stand against the impending dread, or surrender to the darkness? The labyrinth spun in chaos around her, swirling dangers hidden just beyond her reach. Where was the way out? And what was waiting for her on the other side? Mia plummeted deeper into the void, tumbling through nothingness. The shadows whispered, their words curling and twisting around her mind like barbed wire. Join us, embrace the darkness. She fought against the pull, clawing at the air with trembling hands. The abyss felt endless, but with each breath, she sensed a faint light flickering somewhere far above. Was it her son? Was there still hope? She focused hard on that glimmer, willing it to grow brighter. Suddenly, her descent halted. She landed hard on a cold, damp surface, the uneven ground scratching her skin. Gasping, she pushed herself up to her knees. The silence around her was oppressive, yet faint sounds, muffled cries and agonizing whispers echoed through the dark. "Josh!" she called, her voice sounding thin and distant. No response. Just the ever-present whispering of the shadows, dancing just out of sight. She struggled to stand, her heart pounding as she fought nausea. As her eyes adjusted, she discovered her surroundings were not as empty as they had seemed. Shapes darted in the dark, glimpses of figures with sunken eyes, shadows with outstretched limbs. They clawed at the air, yearning, forever reaching for something just beyond their grasp. No, Mia backed away, dread curling around her like a vice. The lump in her throat tightened. A sharp, agonizing scream erupted from one direction. It tore through the shadows, echoing with desperation. She hesitated, a primal instinct urging her to turn away, but she had to know. She had to find her son. With careful steps, she moved towards the sound, heart racing, each quick heartbeat drumming a rhythm of terror. As she rounded a corner, she spotted a flicker of movement, a child's silhouette, small and fragile, struggling against the darkness. "Josh!" Mia whispered, a rush of hope surging within her, yet a twinge of fear gripped her. What if it wasn't him? As she approached, the figure turned. Mia's heart shattered at the sight. It wasn't Josh. The boy was familiar, too familiar. He had the same sunken eyes and lifeless expression that had haunted her dreams. "Help me," the boy whimpered, reaching out, yet his limbs were ensnared, bound in shadowy tendrils that curled around him like serpents. "No. It can't be." Mia recoiled, her chest constricting. The flicker of hope extinguished like a snuffed candle. Join us," the chorus of voices echoed in her mind again, seductive and eerie. "Stop!" she screamed, clutching her head, willing them to quiet down. The shadows laughed, their cruel amusement washing over her like ice water. Before she could react, the shadows churned, dark energy swirling around her legs, binding her to the spot. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, judging her. Panic fluttered wildly in her chest. Just then, a cold snap of air swept past her, and inside that chilling wind, she felt a rush of warmth. "Mom!" The voice was clearer this time, unmistakable hope surged again, Mia's instincts kicked in. With fierce determination, she wrenched free of the tendrils that bound her. She dashed through the shadows, following the sound of her son's voice. "Josh! I'm coming!" The shadows screamed as she tore through them, the familiar coldness biting at her heels. The chaotic whispers ramped up again. "Join us, he will never escape." Panic radiated through her. She refused to believe them. At last, she burst into a vast chamber, the air humming with a darkness so thick it felt tangible. And there, in the center, a pulsating mass of shadow writhed like a living creature. Josh was trapped at its core, his features twisted in fear and despair. "Mom, help!" he cried again, and Mia felt the gravity of her world tilt dangerously. "Hold on!" she shouted, arms stretched toward him, adrenaline flooding her veins. The shadows raged, swirling around her with lightning speed, intensifying her dread. As she reached for Josh, the mass of darkness lashed out, tendrils slashing through the air, eager to tear her down. A flash of light erupted from her hands, illuminating the chamber, pushing back against the encroaching dark. "Let him go!" she screamed, fury fueling her light, burning away at the shadows that clawed for her, but even as she fought, a whisper crept into her mind, low and sinister. "You think you can break free?" It echoed with a chilling laugh that sent shivers racing down her spine. In that moment, she realized something horrific. The darkness was more than a spectral presence. It was cunning, manipulative, feeding off her fear, her rage, her desperate love for Josh. Would she be strong enough to shatter its grip, or would it consume them both? The shadows took a breath, swelling, a new wave of terror crashing over her. But Mia had already made her choice. "Together, Josh. We can do this." The room trembled, the shadows poised to strike, and with a fierce roar, she prepared for the fight of her life. What awaited on the brink of that final confrontation? Would they find light, or would the relentless dark claim them forever? The shadows lunged at Mia, their tendrils grasping and twisting, eager for a taste of despair. She centered herself, focusing on Josh's frightened eyes, the desperation etched into his small features anchoring her resolve. "Let him go," she bellowed again, her voice tearing through the darkness, each word a beacon fighting against the void. Suddenly, the pulsating mass seemed to shudder, a collapsing heartbeat reverberating through the air. Tendrils paused, then retreated, swirling as though caught in a storm. It was as if the darkness hadn't anticipated her strength. The flicker of light from her hands pulsed, illuminating the chamber in a flickering strobe, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the walls. "Mom, please." Josh's voice wavered, and a new brush of terror flooded through Mia. She couldn't afford to fail him. With a determined scream, she surged forward, pushing through the chaos, every muscle in her body straining against the weight of shadow. Mia could feel the darkness clawing at her skin, cold and biting like 1,000 tiny teeth. It whispered lies, seductive promises of the sweet release that awaited if she would just give in. Join us, the voices twisted tumultuously in her mind, wrapping tighter than the bonds of the shadows, and for a brief moment, a flicker of doubt sparked within her. "No. You're wrong." She spat, shaking her head violently, trying to shake off their influence. She felt Josh's fear spurring her on, fueling her anger into an inferno. With one final effort, she stretched out her hand toward the pulsing mass, willing the light to grow brighter. A surge of warmth filled her fingers. The chamber brightened, light cascading through like a wave, sweeping back the encroaching dark. The tendrils, caught off guard, shrieked in pain, retreating as if burned. "Josh, I'm here." She cried again, the fear in her voice morphing into a fierce battle cry. But as her light pushed forward, a new terror gripped her, chaos erupted behind her, shadows writhing and twisting, rising to a climax of malevolence. "Mia." The voice familiar, terrifying pierced her thoughts. It was not just Josh's. It was her husband's. "Mia, help me." Her heart plummeted. No, this was a trick. She knew it was. But the anguish in that voice felt real, cutting through every defense she had erected. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to answer that call, to save. But logic told her to remain focused. "Mom." Josh's terrified wail shattered her moment of hesitation. Dread filled every corner of her soul. She had to make a choice. The shadows howled in glee as Mia hesitated, the darkness moving as if it sensed weakness. She felt its presence pressing against her, thick and suffocating. "No." She gasped, shaking. "I want to let you win." Bolstered by a surge of fierce love for her son, she pushed past the gnawing fear, stepping recklessly toward the pulsating mass, the growing light radiating from within her more fierce than it had ever been. In that moment, as the shadows closed around them, a terrible ripping sound echoed throughout the chamber. It was as if the very fabric of the dark was being torn apart, pulled back to reveal another realm beyond it. Light and shadows battled, colliding in a chaotic whirl. "Mom!" Josh screamed as the light flickered, illuminating faces twisted in anguish among the shadows, lost souls caught in an eternal struggle. The mass pulsed again, but Mia felt renewed strength. "I'm not afraid," she shouted, thrusting her hands toward the darkness with all she had. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of wrath and refusal, then silence. As if the world held its breath. Mia glanced at Josh, fear mingled with determination in his eyes. "Mom, please." His tiny hands reached out, pulling her closer to him, but she could sense a new presence building, something darker than the shadows she had fought. "Mom, help me." The voice echoed again, layered with coldness, and it didn't belong to Josh. It was disjointed, insidious, and unlike anything she had heard before. "Must join," the shadows whispered, desperate to claim her. As the room trembled again, she realized she wasn't just fighting for herself and Josh. Something ancient and hungry lurked, waiting for the moment to strike. Mia felt time slowing, a clock ticking down to an unknown dread. What was this force representing? What awaited them in the aftermath of this battle? As the pulsating light radiated through the dark, Mia braced for an unimaginable truth. And then a chilling realization set in: the shadows weren't the only adversaries. The ultimate terror was only beginning. As the pulsating light flooded the chamber, the shadows recoiled, shrieking in discordant harmony. But Mia's heart drummed in her chest. It felt small, fragile, suffocated beneath the pressure of dread that now twisted around her like a vice. "Mom!" Josh cried out again, his voice tethered to her very soul. But that sinister echo, the one that spoke her name, lurked in the periphery of her senses. Each syllable slithered into her thoughts, entwined with sharpened daggers of panic. Shadows writhed near her, their shapes clinging to the edges of her vision, whispering promises of release that pricked at her sanity. "Mia, help me." The voice rolled like thunder across her consciousness, reverberating with all the love and desperation that should have comforted her, but now it frosted her veins. It was no longer just about Josh. The darkness knew her vulnerabilities. It exploited them, inching closer and curling itself around her like a shroud. She clenched her fists, her palms glowing with light, as if it could ward them off. But shadows flickered within, ready to gnaw at her spirit. "No. I want to become one of you," she yelled, shattering the silence, her words reverberating against the stone walls, trying to bolster her resolve. The shadows paused, as if considering her words. They recoiled, momentarily weakened, revealing twisted figures' faces possessed with torment and anguish trapped in eternal night. The sight sent a shudder through Mia, and she stumbled back, almost losing her footing. "Mom, please." Josh reached for her, his small frame quaking against the dark that surrounded them. She felt the bond between them straining, growing thin like a strand of spider silk on the edge of breaking. She took a deep breath, forcing more light from within, wielding it like a sword against the approaching darkness. "I'm coming for you, Josh." The name surged forth from her, a battle cry that fueled her power, but the shadows recoiled not only from her light. They began to undulate, rising up as if gathering strength. Soon, they unleashed an even darker wail, drawing otherworldly energy from the walls. "Mia, join us!" The whispers turned to a chorus, thrumming through her bones, seducing her with dread and despair. Her eyes widened as she caught movement from the corner, the flickering figures coalescing, forming shapes that morphed into the lost souls they had once been. They loomed closer, their hollow eyes searching her, as if pleading, begging her to understand. Mia felt the edges of her sanity fraying. "No. I want tea." She struggled against the temptation. Yet doubt crept in. What if the voices were right? What if joining them was a way to save Josh? Her mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. Visions of Josh laughing, of safety, of love began to twist with images of Stephen, her husband, lost but now somehow hovering among the shadows. "Mia," the voice chilled her, far too familiar and yet so distorted, teasing her into a place she didn't want to go. She felt the ground beneath her tremble, and the walls seemed to close in, suffocating her thoughts. "Josh!" she roared, pushing forward, spellbound by the darkness that seemed insatiable. Each sense screamed, but she dove deeper, forcing herself to confront the terror unfolding within. The ground beneath them trembled more violently now, shadows scuttling like vermin at her feet. "Mia, help me!" That voice again, tearing at her heart. With a horrifying snap, her surroundings ignited, a corridor of light and shadow twisted into a vortex, and she felt herself being pulled, fighting to stay grounded. "Mom!" The terrifying echo of Josh's voice was swallowed by a thunderous roar. The chamber erupted into chaos, tendrils of darkness reaching out, wrapping tightly around her. The shadowy masses surged, a tsunami of malevolence feeding on her fear. But amid the cacophony, a flicker of hope ignited. Maybe she had the strength to break free. She thought of Josh, of his bravery, and found her own fervor igniting once more. But it was then she realized the shadows were shifting, forming not just to entice, but to ensnare. To entrap. They were converging, drawing closer. "Mia, join us!" Then came the moment where Mia's resolve wavered, as she dared to wonder what lay beyond the shadows if she yielded. What awaited her in that bleak space, tethered to her husband and submerged in despair? The darkness buzzed with anticipation, and she could feel the trap tightening. The ultimate horror wasn't just waiting, it was closing in. The darkness coiled tighter around Mia, its grip unyielding, suffocating her will. Her heart raced, each beat a reminder of the pursuit that pressed against her. "Fight it, Mia, fight," she whispered harshly to herself, but her voice trembled, uncertainty creeping in like an unwelcome shadow. She wished desperately to break the hold of this strange, twisting space. The air thickened, a cold weight settling in her lungs, making every breath a struggle. Somewhere in the darkness, Josh's voice echoed faintly, distant and wavering. The shadows thickened, filling her ears with a cacophony of pleas and curses, resonating with untold stories that clawed at her sanity. "Mom!" Panic fused with desperation in his voice. She strained to focus, each cry pulling her deeper into the swirling abyss, diluting her strength. In a frenzied moment, she pushed against the shadows, fiercely channeling her light. It surged, fierce and bright, momentarily blinding the gloom, illuminating faces twisted in anguish. They were trapped souls enslaved by their own helplessness. Fear and fury burned in her chest, igniting a resolve that she hadn't realized still flickered within. She screamed into the void, "I won't lose you, Josh. I refuse." The words echoed, a defiant roar against the dark drumming that sought to drown her out. Wisps of light scattered in the darkness like fireworks, dispersing the fog of despair, but the illusions twisted around her, and with a sickening clarity, Mia saw what lay beneath the surface. The faces of the shadows morphed and contorted, revealing truths she'd rather forget. Stephen's face emerged, pleading, surrounded by darkness. "Join us, Mia," he said, the familiarity of his voice slathered in a sinister chill. "Together we can be free." "No!" she shouted, and the sound burst forth, raw and unapologetic, shattering the mirage. But the darkness only laughed, rippling through the chamber like a cruel tide. Josh's voice faltered in the chaos, dissolving into a sob. A mist of anguish clouded her senses, and the ground gave a desperate lurch. She stumbled, nearly losing her footing as the shadows encroached, hungry for her despair. They swarmed closer, their whispers morphing into a doomsday choir, repeating her name. Each utterance was a strike against her will, a reminder of her failures, wrestling her into submission. "Mia, join us!" Embraced the void. The temptation lingered, insidious and inviting. Could this dark place offer her solace? A reunion with Stephen? Or would she lose herself entirely? The thought of surrender was a siren's song, pulling her toward the abyss, and for a heartbeat, she considered it. It would be so easy to let go, to drift into the comfort of the familiar, but she pictured Josh, his innocent eyes wide with fear. "I won't," she murmured against the tide. And then something shifted. In the shadows, a flicker, a pulse of hope ignited like a star born from darkness. The darkness shifted, pausing as if sensing her resolve strengthen. She felt tethered to Josh more fiercely than ever, and with a roar, she threw herself against the darkness. "Come on, Josh. We're getting out." Light radiated from her, blinding and furious. Shadows shrieked, recoiling from the warmth, but they were relentless. The swirling mass lunged forward, wrapping around her limbs, pulling her back with icy fingers ready to drag her into the depths. With a burst of will, Mia ripped free, her heart pounding with every ounce of strength she could muster. She breathed in the light, feeling it pulse through her, a defiance burning brightly, but then reality twisted with a chilling jolt. Josh's voice vanished, leaving an echo of chilling silence in its place. "Josh!" she screamed, fear clawing up her throat, and the walls started to shift, closing in around her, reality crumbling. What snapped next could shatter the very fabric of existence. Would she break through the shadows in time, or were they destined to swallow her whole? In that infinite silence, dread seeped in, leaving her with only one question: what awaited her in the darkness if she couldn't find Josh? Mia felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on her, thick and suffocating, twisting everything she had known into an endless nightmare. She couldn't afford to falter, not now. "Josh! I'm coming for you!" she called out into the darkness, her voice ringing clear even as desperation clawed at her throat. She pushed forward, fighting against the shadows that seemed to close in tighter with every step. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the void, jolting her heart. "Mom!" Josh's voice echoed, raw and desperate, erupting from the other side of the darkness. It knifed through the layers of fear, igniting a flame of determination within her. "Hold on, baby. I'll find you." The shadows hissed around her, their whispers turning frantic, feeding on her fear. Yet she refused to let them consume her. With renewed fervor, Mia summoned every ounce of light she had left. The glow of her phone brightened in her hand, casting flickering shadows against the walls. "You will not take me. You will not take him," she screamed, radiating defiance. The darkness recoiled, horrified at her bravery. A sudden rush of air. Or was it Josh reaching out to her? She surged ahead, propelled by the urgency of his voice. She stumbled into another chamber, the ground thrumming beneath her. And there he was, Josh. But before her eyes, he seemed suspended, entangled in the same shadowy tendrils that had plagued her, shadows crawling greedily toward him. "Josh! No!" she cried, lunging forward. The air shimmered with tension, and shadows rushed to envelop her once more. They taunted her, coaxing her to join their dark embrace. "Mia, save your son, let go, no!" she gasped, shaking her head violently, every fiber of her being resisting their seductive whispers. "I want tea. I refuse to surrender." Her voice rang with fierce determination, amplifying her light until it blazed bright against the suffocating blackness. As if in response, the shadows hissed in outrage, thrashing violently. Mia pushed against the dark recoil, forcing her way forward, her heart racing with every beat to Josh's terrified gaze. "I'm here. Fight back!" she shouted, desperate for him to hear. The shadows writhed, a cacophony of disjointed voices merging into a sinister chant. "Mia, join us, embrace your fate." But Mia had only one fate in her sights. "No. Josh is not yours." She focused on the golden warmth that filled her heart, the bond that tied her to her son. The light within her flickered and grew, beaming brighter, a sunshine pushing back against the gathering dark. "Mom!" Josh's cry pierced through the chaos. "I'll never stop fighting for you." Moving with a speed fueled by pure adrenaline, she dashed toward him, grounding herself in his need. She reached out with trembling hands, fully aware that time was slipping, but she refused to accept the end. Josh's tiny form shimmered, barely visible through a veil of shadows, as if he were fighting against the inky tendrils wrapping tightly around him. She ran faster, closer, her hand stretching toward him, and he reached back. "Please!" he whimpered, terror etched on his features. The shadows surged, but they found Mia resolute. "You can't have him!" she yelled fiercely, feeling the heat of her light burst forth. "We are stronger than this." The dark mass raged, swirling in a violent tempest as Mia's light expanded to engulf them both. Josh cried out as she tugged against the grip of shadows. "Hold on, baby!" And then luminescence exploded all around them. A wave of light washed over the chamber, rupturing the fabric of darkness. The shadows shrieked, thrashed, all-consuming, but the light surged forward like a tidal wave. "No!" The vibrating tremors from the figure at the heart of the dark mass ricocheted off the walls. It clawed in desperation, reaching for them, a final attempt to snatch them back, but the brightness held firm, an unyielding shield. "You cannot escape." Mia's heart raced, each beat resonating with love for Josh. As she felt his hand grasp hers, warmth surged through them, as if breaking barriers that had kept them apart for too long. "Together!" she bellowed, uniting their forces, their souls intertwined in one last desperate push against the malevolence. The darkness writhed and shrieked, but their light merged into a blinding brilliance, illuminating every corner of the chamber. The shadows shrieked in agony as the force of their bond broke through the confines of despair. In that moment of pure, unwavering strength, the shadows dissolved around them, shattered like glass, leaving only silence in their wake. "Mom!" Josh's voice wrapped around her heart, and time blurred, reality shifting as the darkness collapsed, pulling her and her son through space. Instantly, she felt fresh air filling her lungs, sunlight streaming against her skin, pouring in clarity as if rebirth had come at last. Mia gasped, blinking against the brightness, the shadows behind her a mere memory. She clutched Josh tightly, relief flooding every pore. "We did it. We're safe." "Mom, I was so scared," Josh whispered against her shoulder, his body trembling. Soothing shivers wrapped around her, knowing they emerged from a nightmare together, not as two but as one. The darkness had tried to take everything from them, but they had conquered it and emerged victorious together, their bond unbreakable. A soft breeze caressed them, carrying the promise of new beginnings as they stood on the surface above, vulnerable but filled with hope. Mia gazed at her son, joy and relief flooding within her. No more shadows, baby. It's just us now. As the world bathed in sunlight, she realized they had left behind the tendrils of despair. They wouldn't just survive, they'd thrive. Down beneath the city, the whispering dark grew silent. But Mia and Josh forged ahead, forever marking their journey into the realm of courage and love. That was when she felt the fading pull of the lost. Yet it didn't matter, they had found their way back. Farther than down in the depths of darkness, here, they stood united, and as they walked into their new light, they would remember. They had fought darkness, and love had conquered all. Thank you for joining this thrilling journey. But wait, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive story that could dive into even more thrilling depths. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support seriously. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, reactions, and theories about this wild conclusion, and don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Let us keep this community growing together.